Hey friends, Neil here from Post to Post, coming at you with my want bracket for the NHL playoffs this year. In the previous video that I just released not very long ago, if you want to go check it out, it's my actual prediction of what happens in the bracket. But in this video, I'm just kind of concentrating on what I want to happen. Now, some of this, if you know me, might not shock you, Canadiens fan, but some of it might. Some of these series might catch you by surprise if you do know me. I might be cheering for teams that I might not expect me to. So let's jump in, let's bring it up, and I'll walk you through it. So let's start off in the same order we went in the last video, which is starting off with the Eastern Conference. So let's do Toronto, and then the Ottawa Senators. I am predicting the Ottawa Senators, or sorry, not predicting, I'm wanting the Ottawa Senators to move ahead here because, well, as a Canadiens fan, that means I don't want Toronto to do good. Like I do, but I don't. Like the hockey fan in me does, but the Canadiens fan in me doesn't. So I don't want Toronto to move on. I want Ottawa to move on. I like Ottawa better, and I also love seeing teams make the playoffs that have not been in the playoffs for a long time, or maybe they made the playoffs and they lost in the first round or whatever. I love to see new blood and new teams go deep in the playoffs. Ottawa's the definition of that, so I'll be cheering very, very strongly for Ottawa in that series. The next series, Tampa, Florida. I don't like either team. Both teams have won the Stanley Cup recently. The Tampa Bay did it twice, plus they went pretty deep, I think, another year, and then the Florida Panthers went deep 2 years and won once. So, like, I've seen so much of the Florida Panthers. I've seen so much of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I honestly don't really care who wins this series, but I have a very strong rule, and this even applies to my Montreal Canadiens. I don't want any team to have repeat Stanley Cups. Even if my Montreal Canadiens won the Stanley Cup, the next year I wouldn't want them to win. I like parity. I want different teams to win every single year. So, not really a huge fan of dynasties, which is ironic because I'm a Canadiens fan, but I wasn't alive during that time. Okay, so I'm going to say that the Tampa Bay Lightning should move on here. That's what I want because Florida just won. So I guess we're putting Tampa Bay back in the limelight here. Next series, Washington versus Montreal. We should know by now that I'm choosing Montreal. Obviously, maybe not so much my prediction, but my want is the Montreal Canadiens move on. So Carolina versus the Devils, the next series. I'm going to choose that the Carolina Hurricanes move on because I like them a lot more than the Devils. The Devils are an interesting team, but I do like a lot of players on Carolina. I like their coach. I like their tenacity. So yeah, Carolina moves on. That puts us to second round, which we have Ottawa versus Tampa. Easy one for me. Choosing Ottawa, would really like them to move on, so I definitely want Ottawa to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that leaves us with Montreal and Carolina in the second round. Well, that's an easy one. I'm picking Montreal to move on to the conference finals. That leaves us with the conference final, the Eastern Conference Finals, the Ottawa Senators versus the Montreal Canadiens. Well, as much as I want Ottawa to move forward, I still want my Canadiens to win the Stanley Cup. So very predictable. I want the Montreal Canadiens to move on to the Stanley Cup final. All right, moving on to the West. We've got the Winnipeg Jets versus the St. Louis Blues. I think on paper, definitely like St. Louis more than Winnipeg, but St. Louis did win the Cup in 2019, and also the Winnipeg Jets have never won the Stanley Cup. So while I generally cheer more for St. Louis, I like teams to win the Stanley Cup for a new time. I think Winnipeg deserves to move forward. I think Winnipeg is maybe the funner team to watch, and it's a Canadian team as well. So I'll be wanting Winnipeg to move forward there into the second round. Dallas versus Colorado. Colorado won the Stanley Cup pretty recently, and Dallas has not won it recently. Although they've been in the playoffs a lot, we've seen lots of Dallas. I still want them to win over Colorado, so I'm wanting Dallas to move on there. And then the Vegas versus Minnesota one, I will be cheering big time for Minnesota. Absolutely, I like Vegas. Like, it's a good team. It's an amazing city. Great jerseys, but they won the Stanley Cup recently. And Minnesota is the underdog. I love cheering for underdogs. And Minnesota just deserves to go deep. Like, Minnesota really deserves to go deep in a playoff run, whether it's this year or next year, whatever. I would love to see Minnesota go far. So definitely cheering for Minnesota there. And then LA and Edmonton. Well, Edmonton got to the big dance last year, and they couldn't get it done. And they needed to get it done. They didn't. And I don't know how they didn't, but they didn't. All right? So, and that makes me angry. And I know they're a Canadian team, and I know I should cheer for them. But they had the opportunity right there on a silver platter, and they didn't get it done. And I feel like they should be penalized for that. And I know the penalty is not winning the Stanley Cup, but still, I'm going to be cheering for LA in this series. I'm going to be cheering for LA to move on. I would say that individually, I like more players on the LA Kings versus the Edmonton Oilers, regardless if one's an American team or one's a Canadian team. I cheer more for players than I do for teams. And right now, I think LA has a little bit more players that I cheer for. So there you have it. So that leaves us with Winnipeg Jets versus the Dallas Stars. I will be cheering for the Winnipeg Jets there. I would like to see the Winnipeg Jets move on to the conference finals, so defeating Dallas. And then Minnesota versus LA. Sorry, LA, here's where you stop. Minnesota, big time, be cheering for them. Hope they get to the conference finals. That leaves Winnipeg versus the Minnesota Wild in the conference finals. And I have to look at the other side, see my Montreal Canadiens there in the finals and think, well, it would be cool to see a Canadian team win the Stanley Cup, even if it's not Montreal. So for that reason, I decided to put Winnipeg over Minnesota. That leaves Winnipeg versus Montreal in the Stanley Cup Finals, and obviously the choice there is for me is to have the Montreal Canadiens be the Stanley Cup winner. So you knew who I was going to choose before the video started, but maybe some of those series surprised you. It might surprise you to see me cheering for Tampa Bay over the Florida Panthers, maybe Minnesota over Vegas, and definitely LA probably over Edmonton. So a couple of little shockers in there. I know not everyone agrees with my reasoning on some of these things, especially like repeat winners and stuff. And yeah, anyways, it's all for fun at the end of the day. So I would love to hear your bracket. I have a bracket live, or sorry, I have a league live right now. I'm just going to bring it up. I mentioned it in the last video, but I'll mention it in this video as well. It's on the NHL.com page where everyone creates their bracket. And then I created my own league called Post to Post. It's got a little skate icon if that helps. And then the password to get in is playoffs. Now, my bracket in this league is just what I want to happen. It's not my full prediction. My actual prediction, that is in the official NHL league or whatever. But yeah, I just got my want bracket in this one. So feel free to join over there. And hopefully there's enough time by the time this video comes out and you can join. I don't know when the cutoff is, but yeah, thanks so much for watching. Thanks for predicting along with me. If you do it, let me know down below in the comment section what team that you want to win the Stanley Cup and who you're cheering for. Maybe your team's out of the playoffs, but who do you want to win the Stanley Cup? This isn't who you think is going to win the Stanley Cup. That was last video. Okay, leave your comment for that over there. But in this one, what do you want to happen? What team do you want to see win the Stanley Cup? I'd love to hear your comments down below so I can get a consensus of who's everyone cheering for. So thanks for watching. Enjoy hockey, and we'll talk to you soon. Adios.